so much for showing up and expressing such an interest in our show.
Thank you. Yeah.
Chic, to kick things off, looking at sort of your history, you've got quite an impressive array of experience from moonlighting to NYPD Blue. What attracted you to Hemlock Grove?
Wow, the fact that you even know what moonlighting is crazy. I was actually standing in front of a class I was teaching at Yale last year, and I was talking about moonlighting, and it was a sea of blank faces, and I realized that no one was even in the class was even born when that show was canceled. So anyway, what attracted me to Hemlock Grove? Well, there were a couple of things. I think the show that I saw was produced last year was just so beautiful and inviting and evocative. It was so beautifully produced and so beautifully rendered. You know, just such a wonderful group of actors, really, really talented people. I mean, I think Brian McGreevy and company set a table that, I was more than happy to be a dinner guest at. And obviously, I think the opportunity to work with Netflix factored into my calculus. I began my television career, as you mentioned, in broadcast television in the era of the 3 network broadcast TV. So, and then moved into basic cable with the Shield, kind of in the early days of basic cable, and then premium TV and stuff. So it's really exciting to be a part of this new wave, of new media. And I'm really fascinated. I don't think we know how new media is going to impact the way we tell our stories, how impact the content, because certainly we told stories in a certain way for broadcast television, and then that changed and morphed a little bit for basic cable, and I think we're only now discovering what new media storytelling is going to be like. I mean, there are some things that are fairly obvious, the whole binge watching thing, but I'm very fascinated to have this be the third act of my career.
You've had a great career, actually. I mean, in my opinion, you, Ryan Murphy, The Shield is probably one of the best TV shows ever in history, in my opinion. And then All in the Family, I'm thinking. But
I say thank you. I can't take really any credit for it. I'm really fortunate to have been part of it. The Shield was a show that when I came on board, I'd had a really disastrous experience at the network, having done a show that, again, this was the era of the balkanization of network audiences, so there was just general fear and panic over, oh my God, what are we going to do to keep eyeballs? So when I went over to the Shield, it was the first time in a very long time that I'd worked on a TV show that I hadn't had a hand in creating. But, when I was looking around for a show to go on to, I sat and watched everything on TV for a couple of weeks, and it was like, that's the show. That's the best show on TV right now. And Sean invited me on board, and I stayed there to the end, because it was really a great show.
And it's good to see where everybody's gone, because in my opinion, FX wouldn't be where it is today if it weren't for that show.
Oh,
and a lot of TV critics agree with that.
Absolutely. The Shield was just one of those shows. I mean, I'm not a sports guy, but there was a Yankees team at one point back in something where everybody came from. Whatever that was, the Shield was that Yankees team. St. Elsewhere was an earlier incarnation of that too. I mean, there were some pretty talented people there that went off and did some amazing things.
You talked about getting new eyeballs. Obviously, with the second season of this, and obviously maybe a third season of this, how do you continue to do that? What is it like as being a showrunner and exec producer? How do you bring new audiences in and keep them in?
Well, unlike the broadcast network experience, which is all predicated on counting eyeballs, and you go to work and you're looking at the numbers from last night and who watched and who didn't, and everybody's in a panic about that. I mean, we don't really factor that into our calculus here. And I think that just frees us to tell compelling stories. I know in the writer's room that if we're our own harshest critics of each other, and in the case of this writer's room, there's some very good writers, very experienced writers. If we're entertaining each other and surprising ourselves, it's fair to say that we'll be doing that with the audience. So, you know, I'm not thinking so much about, I'm not trying to work the program or the audience, gee, are they going to like, I mean, there are some things, for example, musically, when I came to this show this year, you know, I thought the musical palette of the show was a little bit, at least for my taste, a little bit limited. It tended to be very much focused into a particular kind of music or a musical sensibility, and you know, I have a really strong interest in hip-hop, so I wanted to try to bring some of that into the palette of the show. So this season you'll see more of that, and R&B, and reggae, and reggaeton, and Latin music. I think that's one of the ways that I did it, you know, certainly to entertain myself, because to me it's like it's the soundtrack of walking around any American city, this incredibly rich, diverse palette of music. But in trying to thinking about attracting, I mean, you're certainly thinking about telling the best story first, but then in post and everything, you're thinking about, gee, you know, what would make this more accessible or more appealing? You know, there's some of the cake decorating that you can do that opens the show up to broader audiences.
You've kind of hinted at this a bit with some of your previous answers, and I know that you mentioned joining the Shield after it began. I believe you also joined Dexter mid-run. And I guess my question is, how does coming on board a series mid-run differ from being with it from the development or pilot stage?
Right. Different process entirely. I was just, a similar question was asked in my last thing, and I said that it might be construed that I wait until it's well established that there's no sharks in the water in a show before I'll go on. That would be wrong. But you know, that cuts both ways. On the one hand, you come into something that is, you know, underway, and you sort of understand where you know, they sort of cleared the land and leveled the field so you can, you know, pitch your tent. But the other side of that is, you know, you're, in the case of this show, you're coming into something that there's an awful lot to live up to. You know, some of those shows have set the bar pretty high, so you need to come in and be able to, first of all, honor that. You come into a show that's up and running with a good deal of humility, because there's nothing harder than writing a pilot and selling a pilot, and because that's really just starting with an absolutely blank page and trying to get everybody to see the same thing. It's an entirely separate process than actually producing a show. So you come in with a lot of humility about the work that's been done before, and then you want to, you know, add to it and embellish it and expand it and take it further.